Are you an ambitious leader ready to break through limiting beliefs, align with your purpose, and thrive in your career without sacrificing your well-being or postponing your true desires? I'm Diana Ordonez, certified high-performance coach and your host. Each week, we'll dive into actionable insights and research-based strategies to help you unlock clarity, build unshakable confidence, and take courageous action toward a life of impact and fulfillment. If you're ready to overcome fear, embrace growth, and step boldly into your next level, you're in the right place. Let's create a life filled with courage and purpose together. Hi, everybody. I'm going to bring Carolina on here for our Friday morning lives. So I'm excited because I know I said this last time with vision, but mindset is my favorite topic.
All this coaching stuff is our favorite.
Yes, it's all our favorite. Vision is always exciting for me because it's like, what are we working towards, right? Like, it's where are we going? And that's always, the energy for that is always so exciting. But mindset is so much about like digging deeper and getting curious and exploratory, and all those things are just like things that I really like to sink my teeth into. So I love to dig my teeth into this stuff because it is like questioning everything that we have been programmed to believe to this point, and understanding, like, having that aha moment that, oh, this is how I got here. This is really what's going on for me, is just so exciting for me because it is the turning point for people in a coaching session. It's like, oh, wow. And that awareness is the beginning of like changing your life, right? And so that's why I love mindset. And for me, it's been just so transformative to have that awareness, and then to like move closer and closer to becoming aware of it sooner so that I can choose better, right? And it's been just a journey. So my very first time that this really clicked for me was when I started listening to the Brooke Castillo podcast, the Life Coach School podcast, back in like 2018. And she teaches the model, right? And the model is, and if you're familiar with it, right, is our circumstances are the first, where everything starts, right? This is what you can prove in a court of law. This is the situation as it is, just stating the facts, right? This is the amount of money I make. This is the kind of job I have. I lost my husband. I lost my job. I am X years old. I have, this many kids. These are the facts, right? And then people typically think, well, my circumstance is causing me to feel this way, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
And the line between that we all have to start paying attention to if we really want to change our lives is that there is typically a one-line sentence, and sometimes it goes on for paragraphs depending on how much you ruminate, that happens between your circumstance and how you feel over prolonged periods of time, right? And that sentence, those are your thoughts. It's not your circumstances aren't, I don't have enough time to go after my passion. Your circumstance is, I have X amount of kids, I make X amount of money, and there's X amount of hours in a day, right? And then you believe, this is the belief you have, I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough money to do XYZ, or I don't, whatever. Or, my life is terrible, or, whatever the sentence you tell yourself leads to whatever you're feeling. And the thing is that your feelings are what creates the energy towards your actions, right? Like, that's what generates energy towards the actions that you take, and your actions are what create your results. And most times what we find is that we think if I can just will myself to like act the right way, the way that I want to act, then I can create the results in my life that I want. And if I could just go to the gym more, if I could just, apply to more jobs, blah, blah, blah. And we say, if I could just do it, then I will have the results that I want. Not realizing that we have all these beliefs about our circumstances, about who we are, about what's possible for us, that lead us to carry this energy throughout our lives, that lead to the actions that we either take or don't take, right? And then that's what leads to our results. And so, we ask ourselves disempowering questions that like, why can't I seem to get myself to the gym? And why? So we're living in this like shameful energy where we don't believe that we're worthy of the thing that we want, right? And so I know you come prepared with some of these examples of what limiting beliefs sound like and how they kind of manifest. So I want to pass over to you for a bit.
Well, I mean, even going on the same trend that you were talking about, the funny thing is we talked last time about how we met in a continuing education course, in 21. And now, did you say you're in South Carolina now?
I'm in North Carolina now. I was in New Jersey then.
You're in New Jersey. I'm down here in South Texas. And we just like divinely got connected. And I think, for us, we had a lot of similarities. Mm-hmm. Like you said, losing the husband or whatever. And what I've noticed that it doesn't matter if you're younger like you are or older, because that's a lot of those limiting beliefs. It's like, I'm too young or I'm too old, and one of the things I thought of is, and this is every day with me, mine is age and technology, It's like, okay. What in the world? Like, I can't do this. I'm too old. I don't even... I grew up in the age of, what was that movie about all the women who were working at NASA? I feel like that, where when I was in high school, a computer took up a room. So I'm like, really, God, you want me to do this podcast or you want me to do this thing? And I was like, I used to say, like, I'm technologically challenged. And then I realized that was a limiting belief. Mm-hmm. Instead of believing that I am a great learner, yep, that I can do and learn any new skill despite my age or despite the era that I grew up in. And so that was one of the things that hit me, because I would find myself like with these little cop-out statements. Well, and I see it a lot on social media. That's why I'm bringing this up, because it comes, mm-hmm, I hear this a lot in my circles. Well, that's easy for you. Mm-hmm. Or, you didn't accomplish this. Well, it must be nice. Or you took that vacation, it must be nice. Or, well, that's easy for you, but I'm a single mom and I have, mm-hmm, like I said, this amount of pay. And I think challenging those limiting beliefs has to be the first thing. Discovering the mindset of where it comes from, first of all, mm-hmm, like, why do you have that belief? Right. And I just gave you mine. Like, sometimes it's valid experience, yes, I did grow up in a different era. I didn't grow up where everybody just was doing everything on an iPad or a, mm-hmm, computer in class. I grew up in that. So that's valid. Okay. Being a single mom with a limited income, that's valid. But it doesn't mean you can't take the vacation. It doesn't mean you can't have the experiences, mm-hmm, so that's just maybe a lack of discipline or planning. So I think, first of all, identifying them, and then discrediting the lie. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was huge with me. And I know, like, one of the things that we connected on was our faith. And it's like, where do you find the truth? Like, if you identify there's a lie, but where do you find the truth? And I go, mm-hmm, to the Bible, like, a lot. That's like, I think this is the truth. So I go to the Bible. And so if I say, I believe I'm too old to accomplish what I thought I was created to accomplish, or let's say a dream that I had in my 20s, like, oh, I'm going to do this one day, or I'm going to become this one day. And then all of a sudden you're not 25, you're 55. And then you think I'm a failure, or I couldn't do it. So how do you discredit that lie? And so one of the things, and this might be old fashioned, so you can bring me like in the new era, but I teach this, and this was very productive. And a lot of my clients is just taking an index card and writing. So I take an index card and I will write the lie, whatever I've identified. Nobody in my family has ever gone to college. You know, I can't go to college because nobody in my family has ever gone to college. I can't own my home. I find this a lot, especially dealing with the single moms. And I think it's so cool that that was a thing in part of my family. And now my two nieces own their own homes, you know, and they're single and they own their own home. You know, it's like, it's things like that. So I'm too old to accomplish what I was created to accomplish. And I love technology in this aspect because now you can just Google about. So there's no excuses. This will take you like 30 seconds. Esther 4:14, and you hear this quoted a lot, or you see it on, you know, like pictures in stores or little memes. But it says, "For if you remain silent, relief will arise from another place. But who knows that you were created for such a time as this?" And then I think about it, I was like, wow, I was created for this time. I wasn't born too early. You know, I am too old. I have something to contribute to the world for such a time as this. So what does that look like? And in the days that I get frustrated, going back to that, and it's like, oh no, remember, you know, it's like writing down your vision and your mission statement. It's like, oh yeah, this is who I am. Because sometimes we forget on the bad days. We forget on the days that we have a flat tire. We forget on the days that the bills are late, you know, that we revert back to those limiting beliefs. I knew it, you know, nobody in my family can ever get ahead, you know, and this is proof. And I was like, no, wait, go back to, through God, I can accomplish all things, you know, go back to whatever that truth was, that will discredit that lie that you believe. That's my first idea. Okay, so do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm jotting down like my notes so that I don't forget, because otherwise it's like forget. But what I love about what you said is it's about like who you see yourself to be, like who you believe you are, like your identity.
Yes.
Right? Who are you choosing to identify as? Right? Because you get to choose. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes.
Like you get to choose, who do I want to, you know, believe I am? Who do I want to show up as in the world? And one of the biggest, you know, parts of changing habits, they've said, is, you know, I associate with the new identity of the person that does the kinds of things that you want to do. Yes. Right. And so I know for me, that's been really, you know, game changing. And I've done it just kind of like, I don't know, instinctively throughout my life, but I realized that I've done it in the bad way, kind of like you said, right? Like it works against you too if you say, I'm just technologically, you know, what do you say, challenged? So I've done that too, where, you know, I'm just fill in the blank, clumsy. I'm just absent-minded, like all the ways that you acquire this idea and then you see it like manifesting in your life. And then one day I just decided, I came up with this. It's like sometimes you have to have an in-between of what you can believe versus like where you want to be. And, you know, I went from saying I'm just clumsy. I say I'm a great faller. Because you know what? It's like, I can't deny that that I am falling all the time, but I am great at it. Because why? Because
all this experience.
I've never broken a bone. I've never torn anything. Because I catch myself before anything gets really terrible. But like I fall down all the stairs. Like it's really hilarious. But so I'm getting to the next step, which is, you know, I have great hand-eye coordination one day, or I have great balance one day. but I am great. I'm a graceful faller.
Yes, yes. You're gonna be like, watch me fall.
This is funny, but so it's like, that's like, that there's comic relief there. But there was a time where I decided, like, you know, I don't do mediocre, right? Like, it's like, who was it? I think was it Mary Forleo that said this? She says, I don't do, I think it was busy or overwhelm. I don't do overwhelm, I think is the thing she said. It's like just making a conscious decision about what you do and what you don't do. Like, I years ago, I just had decided, like, I just don't do sweets. I just don't like them. Like,
Oh,
I just don't eat them, right?
okay.
And it was like, I tried it on and I was like, yeah, I can believe that. And then it would inform all my decisions. Like, it was like, I didn't even, like, it didn't even cross my mind to want to try it, because I was just like, that's just something I don't do. I don't do that. Again,
Okay.
there might be an in between that you need to go with, like, I'm a great follower. Maybe I just don't do that many sweets. I don't know.
Well, okay. I love what you're talking about, like, because you're being realistic, and that's the thing. A lot of people with me. So my tagline for my courses was to find your fairy tale, and I believe that happily ever after isn't a lie. And I get a lot of kickback. But it goes back to your definition. So it's not being like, oh, we're going to live in a fantasy world and just, manifest this when it's not a reality. You're being realistic. And so this is one of the things that I use. I tell the young women that I work with all the time to identify what's the truth and what's a lie, then what's in your control and what's out of your control. And I think that's what you were talking about. Like, what is the middle ground? What can you hold on to that's realistic? And then where do you move from there? So let's talk about me being technologically challenged, right? Second week in a row, I'm like, okay, last week I was sideways. This week I was upside down.
Oh, it was sideways.
And so it's not a lie. The being technologically challenged is not a lie, okay? So I have to identify that it's not a lie, but like you said with the falling, it's realistic. But what am I going to do with it? And that's the difference. It's like, how am I going to view it? Where before it would frustrate me, I would quit, I would shut my laptop, I would walk away, I was done, I was not going to move forward. That will keep you stuck and trapped. And it's like Dr. Caroline Leaf, I don't know if you've ever studied her, read any of her material. She talks about these dendrites. So you have these neuro pathways in your mind. And it's like, okay, every time this happens, I'm going to respond this way. I'm going to respond this way. Yes. And you form these pathways. And so that's your automatic default. And one time when I lived in Montana, this actually happened to me. It snows and the snow melts and the roads get muddy, right? And so the next morning I took off to go to town. I had an SUV and it had snowed. It was beautiful and pristine. And I was driving and I hit one of those ruts that was frozen and it knocked me into the ditch. So that's a reality. The rut is there, but what are you going to do about it? Are you going to stay in the ditch? Are you going to, recognize, okay, I have created a rut here because I always revert to this pathway? Or are you going to say what's in my control, what's out of my control? So the next time that you come across that situation and the road is muddy, it's like, okay, I have a choice. I can make a new pathway. I don't always have to go in the ditch. And I have to make a choice. It's like, okay. And I love just the fact that we were talking about this. And I thought I was all ready and had everything set up. And I still upside down. And instead of getting frustrated, which was my old pathway into the ditch, I laughed. And I was like, okay, like you said, I'm a great follower. It's like, okay, I am not perfect. I do have challenges, but I'm going to, okay, let's just turn it over. Let's fix it. Let's see what the issue is and let's move forward because I refuse to stay stuck in the Middle Ages.
Yes.
I because I was created for such a time like this,
Yes. I love that. So a lot of the things that I hear you, I hear affirmations, which we talked a little bit about last time too, because it gives us a go-to to reprogram our minds. It's like you said, like reprogramming your mind is choosing very intentionally a new pathway,
yes,
and choosing it over and over and over till you reprogram your mind.
yes,
And the only way to do that effectively, which I hear you saying with different words, because realistic is like always makes me cringe, and we've talked about that before too. It is like that new pathway that you're creating. It's only possible if you have that growth mindset of
yes,
I
yes,
am not perfect
yes,
and nobody else is either,
yes,
and we cannot strive for perfection.
right.
Like and I understand that. So what's the opposite of perfect? Is it realistic? And so that, but
Yeah,
the reason I don't like realistic is because realistic is such like subjective thing. Like, how do you know what is realistic? Like, all things are possible through God, right? Through Christ who strengthens me. So if all things are possible, then if you're realistic, that means that somebody else is deciding what is possible or not possible, right? And to me, it's more about, okay, it's not about being perfect. It's about like going on the journey,
yes,
and growing through that journey, and like imagining all things possible, but understanding that on the journey to get to the impossible goal, you need to create small steps
yeah, yeah,
that you can't tomorrow, stand in, go to sleep and do nothing, and tomorrow like wake up in your fairy tale world, right? Like it's we don't have um you know a magic wand, in the sense that you don't get to not do anything. Even the Bible, if you look at any of the miracles that Jesus performed, or even when it was, God, like there was always a step that you had to take in faith to
yes,
receive your miracle,
yes, yes.
right?
Yeah, maybe it wasn't realistic. It was what you're talking about, the facts. What are the facts that I can't change?
Right. Like, you have $10.
Yeah.
You can't pay for the $20 thing with a $10.
Yeah. I'm in my 50s or 30, it's like that's a fact.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, exactly. Like, base it on the facts.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's not that you can't have the vacation, like you said. It's like,
Yeah.
I really would love to go on a vacation. What kind of vacation can I make possible?
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
how can I make a vacation possible? I always say, like, shift to how.
Yes.
Right? That's how you train your brain to look for possibilities. Right? Like, when you think about the why is always like why am I here? Why this? What? It's always like this, like, shameful, self-deprecating question that we ask ourselves, and we will come up with a shameful, self-deprecating response. Our brains are so powerful. That's why I love mindset. They're like the most powerful tool you have available to you, and we use it so often of the time to like hurt ourselves rather than empower ourselves.
I was trying to find something. I read something last night, and I thought, wow, this is so cool that I'm reading this right before, we were talking about this morning. So last night I was reading a book, and then I got off on a rabbit trail, which I do so often, because I was like, oh, I never heard of that. Let me Google it. So he was talking about Viktor Frankl, and you've probably heard about Viktor Frankl, but I don't know how much you've read about him. And so I was reading about his life.
Search for meaning.
Yes. Yes. And how he was talking, like, even in the Nazi concentration camp, he continued on this pathway. And I think because I was talking to my sister last night, and I think we talked about her before, and I think she was on last time. She was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and we were talking last night, and she's like, it's been an almost 2-year journey. And it's been very challenging, like all of these obstacles along the way. And she said, but it's my choice to stay positive throughout this journey. And there's actually been scientific proof that patients have a better diagnosis, you know, according to their mindset throughout the process. And so I go to bed and I'm reading, and I read this about Viktor Frankl, and he says the ultimate freedom lies in choosing one's attitude in any circumstance, highlighting the power of personal responsibility and the pursuit of meaning. And I was like, yes, we still have a choice. It doesn't mean that you don't have the cancer diagnosis.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you don't lose your spouse. It doesn't mean that you don't lose the job. It's like, but how are you going to respond? Are you going to like throw the technology away and run off and cry and stay stuck? Or are you going to laugh and say, okay, I am imperfect, you know, but I am going to do this imperfectly until I learn better,
right.
You know, or I am going to, I can't tell my kids like, we're just never going on a vacation because it's not possible. And I teach this to my moms because I had big dreams. Like, I want to cry because I had like huge dreams. And some of them, they weren't like, oh, I'm just going to go to Europe next month. Some of them took me 3 years of planning and saving and, you know, manipulating how I could use points. And people think this is not a possibility. Is it that it's not a possibility, or you don't want to take the time to be intentional to achieve that God-given dream?
Yeah. Whew. That's perfect. But do you not want to because of whatever pain you're still carrying around what that would mean, right? Like, I think, so what losing Juan taught me is that it like really put me on a journey of healing. And through that journey, what I learned is, like, so we are all walking around with wounds that we're so not even aware of, right? And most of our limiting beliefs come from that place.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important to like heal the wounds before, or at least at the, you know, at the same time that you start doing mindset work. I think that's also important to mention, because what I did in 2018 when I learned the model is I tried to bypass all my emotions by doing mindset work. And I'm like, why isn't this working? I still feel terrible. Because a lot of us are just creating defense mechanisms for not feeling our emotions from real wounds that informed our limiting beliefs. Right? Like, you know, sometimes our inability to like embrace an abundance mindset comes from all the pain and the suffering we watched and the fear that we experienced when we were in poverty. That we didn't allow ourselves to actually feel. Right? And so to then try to say, I'm going to allow myself to have something that's so outside of what I believed was possible just feels so like unsafe to our nervous system. It just feels wrong, and it you want to say it shouldn't, right? And that just keeps us in the same place. Like, why can't I see this differently? Like, why do I keep self-sabotaging? And it's because we shame ourselves for not feeling what we need to feel. And like, I hate to say the word feel too, because there is such a difference between the feelings, the prolonged feelings that we have because we keep repeating these thoughts to ourselves, and then this stored energy that comes from emotions that were never processed in the moment of, you know, highly traumatic events, when we were powerless, when we, you know, we didn't have a say, we were fully dependent on somebody else to determine our safety and meet our needs. And so when we have another traumatic experience as an adult, it like opens up all those previous wounds. It's because it says, you see, that was all true. The world still is what you thought it was. And now as an adult, it's different, right? Because you get to choose now to want to believe different. But you can't do that without processing out that, energy, that emotion, that physiological need for healing. Like, God created us perfectly, which means we have a system in place that allows us to heal. And unfortunately, culture, society has made it so that we don't use those tools that are accessible to us for healing, because crying is weak, screaming is like crazy, and shaking is like weird, all these practices for healing the nervous system that in the past were just like unacceptable. I don't know when that started. Right?
Yes, I don't either. That whole toxic masculinity too.
Yeah. And so I think it's important to mention, because when I started doing mindset work, I did not have that. Like, I didn't even know what that meant. I'm like, okay, great. How do I feel my emotions? How? I don't even know what that means, And so I did, when the first coach that mentioned it to me, like, she's like, Diana, it really sounds like you're trying to bypass your emotions. I was like, what? It just made no sense to me. All right, so I guess
I want to touch on that, because you were talking about emotions and hurts and pain, and that, like I said, this is something we kind of talked on last time, because I said that, like, I was in mourning for 3 years and I was in pain and crying myself to sleep. So these are valid things. And so how do you balance, this moving forward and getting healing too? And I also wanted to point out the difference between, internal and external, because sometimes, well, I see this a lot, especially on social media, which social media can be used for so much good, and then it can also like contribute to some of these limiting beliefs. Like I said, must be nice or whatever. But there is a trend to believe the external will make you happy. Like, if I just have the vacation, if I just have the house, if I just have the man. And I want to clarify that that's not what we're talking about. And the abundance mindset does not solely relate to stuff. Because if anybody's listening and misunderstands that, because the internal is so much more important in the long run, because if you're not healed internally, if you don't have the abundance mindset internally, if you don't actually know who God is and what he can do in your life internally, then all of that external stuff will still not help. And I had this example. There was a time in my life, and it was surreal. Okay, it was just this surreal, I don't even know how it happened. It's like we had this big ranch in Montana, and then we sold everything and moved down because of health reasons. And we had this insane house. And my son was in high school, and his friends would be like, how'd you get this house? And it's like, well, when you sell a whole ranch, it's like, you can buy a pretty nice house. And so that season in my life, I had this like super nice house and super nice car. And those are the things that people think that are going to make them happy, and got to travel. And I was so lonely and just broken inside. And so externally, it was the life that people think would make them happy. In fact, I did this little exercise. I had all of these teenage girls over for a sleepover, and I let them use these things that people would think would make them happy. If you had all of this, if you had diamonds and furs in the car, like, are you happy? Are you any different as a person? It's like, no, that doesn't make you a different person.
There's this saying, right? Money will only make you more of what you already are.
Yes. So if you're not kind, compassionate, healed, loving, Yeah, so I wanted to cover that because that was a big part of the journey from my 40s on, was finding that healing that you were talking about. And recently, and I think I mentioned it last time, my friend and I, who's also a life coach, we got invited to present at this conference. And I love what we got to do because the conference was for people who are caretakers, like in whatever aspect in the world, in ministry, counselors. And so we opened up with the difference between counseling, mentoring, and life coaching. And I think that's also important to say. It's like sometimes when you are hurting, that's counseling is required.
Right.
You know, you can be a life coach and let's set the goals and let's do the action steps and let's, you know, conquer those limiting beliefs. But if you have areas, like you said, that need to be healed, that's a different journey that, you know, it still needs to be addressed.
Right.
You know, and it's very important. And that's what I had to go. You're either going to take the 40 years around the mountain, you know, or you're going to cut to the chase and, you know, find an aspect. And I don't know, like, you know, maybe if you want to address how you got healing in some of those areas. So people,
so I think people don't go on this journey because it is not for the faint of heart. Like, it's not easy. Like, it takes facing yourself.
yes,
Like, facing all the ways that you have tried to make yourself feel worthy, and then facing the fact that, oh my God, I didn't feel worthy before, right? Like, it's like, oh, what I thought was what I believed wasn't really what I believed. Like, what I wanted to believe wasn't really what I was believing. And that alone comes with a lot of pain. Like, it sucks to face yourself and learn that you are the source of a lot of your own misery, right? Like, like the fact is, a lot of what I was doing was running from my pain. And I think a lot of us are doing that and not even realizing we're doing it. Like, before I even started down this personal development journey, I was already a psychology major. And then I had a master's in industrial organizational psychology. So, like, I thought I knew everything about the mind and feelings, and I was going to be a counselor. I did a year of that. And it was like, it took so many years, like at least 3 years, like you said, after Juan died, to realize, to like heal and look back at not just, it's like, why am I doing that? Like you said, why do I have these patterns in my life? And one of the patterns was, yes, I believe in aiming for greatness. I believe in working hard. I believe in, you know, being a kind person. I believe in all these things, but I realized a lot of what I was doing, like, that was hurting me, like overworking, overcommitting, you know, abandoning myself, was because I was trying to prove, like, that I was a worthwhile human being, that I was a worthy person. And when your actions come from this, like, I thought, oh, I'm just doing these things because I want to be a, you know, hard worker, and I want to have all these accomplishments, and I want to do. And yet I realized through therapy, and I don't know if you've had this experience, but I've done EMDR therapy and talk therapy with a trauma specialized therapist. Not because I think all therapists that are out there are doing this work because they're, you know, they feel called to it and they have a heart for it, but not all therapists are equipped to do trauma-informed therapy, because they have to be comfortable going deep into the dark places and not allow you to just come in and talk for an hour like a girlfriend, you know? It's like they have to be willing to, like, force you to sit in the underlying emotion that you keep avoiding. Like I would bring something up from my childhood, and I would feel the emotions swell up, and she like automatically would always catch me when I was like trying to just push through it and move on to the next thing, right? And I was like, let's sit there. And I'm like, ooh, I don't want to sit there. Like, do we have to? Like, I'm fine. I'm over that. Right? But I wasn't, because what the gift that EMDR gives you, and yes, it's hard. It's hard because if any of you are familiar with EMDR, it's, rapid eye movement. And what that does is it tries to engage both, or it accomplishes, it engages both sides of the brain, so the emotive brain and the logical brain, so that you can revisit the past, and actually process the emotion from the adult self, rationally, right? Like you can do both. And it brought back things from my childhood that I really believed I was over and I wasn't thinking about. And some of it meant like you feel like that person that was going through it in that moment, like not who you are today looking back on it. Like you get to experience what it felt like to, go through it when you were going through it. And then and like the thoughts that I was having during EMDR, I was like, but I can't believe I believe this, and I don't want to believe this, and I can't believe this is how I feel about myself. And it's just that awareness that like, oh, I was really overworking because I wanted to believe that if I just worked really hard for love to receive recognition, to like, if I could just be loved by people by giving them everything that they want and everything that they need and not have any needs of my own, then I'll be worthy of their love, right? Like, and all that stuff is just like, without addressing that, you can't like have healthy habits, because you're just going to keep self-sabotaging, right? And you're right, there's a place for coaching, and you also, there's a place for therapy, and it's important, and they are different, because therapy is about the wound. Therapy is about healing. Coaching is about, okay, let's move forward. What do you want now? Let's look at the future. Like, how do you want to, how do you want to respond to this now that you've gotten to this place in your life? And I tried to like bypass that because I've been in therapy before, and I thought I was, I would, one of the things that I didn't realize is when you joke about your trauma, it means you're not healed.
Oh.
When you like try to like laugh it off, that means, it means that you have pain there, and you rather just act like it wasn't painful. Like you dismiss yourself, right? Like you're dismissive of your own, trauma. And it's just been a journey. And it did open, I didn't expect to go here with this, but I think it is so important, because you could do more damage than good sometimes if you try to bypass that.
Yeah, and I think it's good to identify, because it goes like with my last example, but I want to clarify there's two things, because people may not realize like that they have that issue that needs to be dealt with, because I'm like, I'm a real good stuffer. Like I'll push it down and push it down and push it down. And so there's two examples that came to mind. And because let's say you fell down the stairs and you scraped your knee and somebody bumps your knee, okay, your raw knee. They didn't hurt you, but they hit that sore spot, okay? And so that's, okay, there's an issue there. I have to identify the issue, because their action did not warrant my response, right?
Right.
So you have that. You have a skin knee. That's one. And another one is, let's say you got a splinter, okay, and you can't see it, but something hurts. And every time and it's like, oh, I'm just going to push it down. You can't just push it down, because it's going to come out at some time or another. So you have to deal with it. And like you said, dealing with it is painful. I hate that. I've had that with my grandkids and they get a splinter. It's like you have to literally slice to get it out, you know, if tweezers won't do it. And so we can have that external scar or wound, you know, that we have to deal with, or we can have that internal one where we have to go a lot deeper. But if we don't deal with those, what happens is somebody else or something else bumps them. And then we respond in a way, like you said, that was unwarranted. And we don't know why we're doing it because we're not that. Like I noticed this week, for some reason, you know, I was grouchy in the mornings. And I think part of it is, like you said, we have these things that we're in control of. It's like, this is the person I want to be. This is what I need to do to get there. And I'm not doing it. So I was like, last night, I think it was like 7 o'clock at night. I am tired when I get home, but I went to the gym because that was one of the commitments I made to myself. Well, if you're constantly lying to yourself, you know, this is the person I am, this is the things that I'm going to do, this is what I want to be, but you're not doing the actions. It's like, yes, I'm going to be frustrated, and I may be frustrated with myself. I'm not frustrated with everybody else. I'm frustrated with me. So I would say that pay attention when you have those responses that are unwarranted. Try to identify, you know, what the wound is or what the issue is that's causing that. And okay, so my example, I was thinking this morning when I was thinking about limiting beliefs about sunglasses, because we have these filters, okay? And some, like if you put on sunglasses to protect your eyes from the sun, you know, that's a nice light thing. And that's great, but it's still like the sun is, I look white because the sun is like beaming in through the windows. Like it's super bright right now. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing, you know. But when you put on sunglasses, you have a filter and you're like, oh, it's not that bright. I don't know if you've ever been driving down the road and you're like, is it about to rain? And then you take off your sunglasses. It's like, oh no, it's just my sunglasses. So we don't see things clearly.
Right.
But I also think there's another way where we filter things out and we can't see what's possible. And that's what those limiting beliefs do. And so this morning I was thinking about that because those are the issues I've had to dig through. Like I said, just all of my upbringing, just the things where I had all these limiting beliefs. And it's like once, it was like when the time barrier for running the mile was broken. You know, sorry. Like, this is not possible. This is not possible. And as soon as somebody made it possible, then everybody
else did it.
Yes.
But the thing about that was that not only did the doctor say it wasn't possible, like they said you would die. You will die if you do this.
But did you die? Yeah.
Scientifically speaking, the doctors said this.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, that's when I say there's no such thing as being like realistic, because it's like, who gets to decide that? Like, that's what they said. Running the mile under this amount of time is unrealistic. Like, if that's what you feel called to do,
yeah, like,
do it. Like, just this week, for some reason, this has been on my mind ever since. And somebody said, was it this week or last week? I forget. But I've heard this before. It's do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And they usually talk about it when they're talking about having an argument with, you know, a person. And I said to them, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I was like, whether I'm right or I'm wrong, I recognize that being happy is a choice. And I can make that choice regardless. And I said, okay, so the people that do really well in coaching, the leaders that are most fulfilled, they're not thinking about whether they're right or they're wrong. And they're not worried about if it's going to make them happy. Right? They are thinking of it, they are curious.
Yes.
Right? Curious. They are curious. Like, let's see if I can do it. Right? Like, let's see what happens. They're curious about, I wonder why that didn't happen. I wonder why I haven't done that. I wonder what would happen if I tried this. I'm curious. The most successful people are not just curious about the possibility, they're curious about themselves, they're curious about other people. Like,
Yes.
I wonder what, and there's a difference between being curious, asking the deeper questions to like understand and learn, versus to ask questions to make a judgment call, right? Like,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like, no, like, I want to understand what happened. And that curiosity takes away from, did I make the right decision? Did I make the wrong decision? It's like, let's see what happens. And then you don't have a right or wrong decision. You have an outcome that you
Yes.
get curious about, right? It's like, okay, this happened. I wonder how it could have been better. I wonder how it could have been different. It's like, stop asking yourself why, and it's like, what is this teaching me? What is it that I can take from this? Or how can I make this better? How, how is this going to turn out the way I better even than I could have imagined? Like, to me, one entrepreneur I saw at a women's conference thing agreed to meet me for coffee, which was like, wow, that's all, thank you so much. And the thing that changed, I don't remember much of anything else we talked about, but she said she had a tattoo on her arm that said, curiosity over fear.
Mm.
And I said, why did you get that? And she said, well, I read it in this book. I can't even tell you what the book was right now. I have it on my reading list somewhere, but it just made courage feel so much more accessible.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's not about us. It's not about, right or wrong. It's like, let's just see. Like, I wonder, like, that it takes away the ego of it. Like, being right or wrong, it's all about your ego. Like, what does this mean about me? Mm-hmm. Right? Me not working late hours, or me working late hours. It's all about, what does this mean about me? Yes. Oh, I'm a great worker. I'm a this, it's like, what do we believe about ourselves is informing our actions and our behaviors. Just like when people get on their first coaching call and they're like, I'm so burnt out and all this stuff. And it's like, no, I can't just not answer emails after 5:30. No? Why? What would that mean about me? Right? That would mean I'm a bad employee, or I'm a, and it's like, it goes back to what you said about identity. And it's like, the further we can get from the ego and more about being curious and being about possibility and asking questions about, well, how could I create better boundaries for myself? How could I make this dream possible? Even if it's not tomorrow, maybe it's 3 years from now, like that vacation. Being a problem solver, like, I remember taking on that identity. Like, I'm a great problem solver. I decided. And Mary Bartley also says, everything is figure outable.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that because it's so true. It's like, no matter what happens, you can either sulk, like you said, in the ditch, or you can decide how you're going to come out of it and recognize that you will grow through that experience.
Yes. Yeah. And hi, Alyssa. I wanted to end, because it's like, I can't believe it's been an hour already.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I wanted to end with this because of what you were saying. And another limiting belief is in that, going from that statement, is the finite and infinite. Like, I believe all men are horrible. And so that's my limiting belief. And until, like, my current husband comes along and it's like, oh, my experience had been, but that's not the truth. So I wasn't curious. I wasn't about to go back out fishing, looking or whatever, because I had just made up my mind. And so we have to determine what's infinitely possible and what's finitely possible. And last week, 2 weeks ago, I don't remember when it was, I spoke to a women's group about young women and about mentoring. And I said, as a young woman, I wanted to believe that everything I read about God was true, but I wasn't seeing it modeled. So what it was, he was finite to me because I didn't see the infinite possibilities that I read about. You know, the stories were stories and not real life. And so if God in my life is finite, then how could the possibilities be infinite? You know, and so I determined I was going to live to be that example for other young women, and which has led me to the life coaching journey. And so one of the things that talking about limiting beliefs, talking about the sunglasses and limiting beliefs, one, we put on to have a filter. So we have these filters like sunglasses that block out things that are harmful. But then I have these, you're going to love these.
Are those polarized sunglasses?
Polarized. Okay, so if you've never used polarized, okay, yeah, see, you're gonna keep this right. This is gonna be your screensaver. Polarized sunglasses. You go fishing and you don't catch anything, so there's no fish in the ocean, right? Until you put these on. And again, this makes me want to cry. And I got polarized sunglasses, and I looked, and this actually happened last weekend. And they were like, oh, do you see all those fish? Do you see all the turtles? And I was like, no, because I had on regular sunglasses. I had that filter on. But if you go out and you put on polarized sunglasses and all of a sudden you see all of these fish, and it feels like cheating because then you can drop your line right where the fish are. And I think that's when God calls us to something and we have all of these limiting beliefs until we put on those spiritual polarized sunglasses. It's like, if he says it, then I know that beneath that surface, there is everything that he's told me that I could accomplish. It's possible. You know, I'm the one, I still have to go fishing. I still have to do the work, but I have to put on, instead of that filter of hurt and pain and scars from my past, I have to rip that off and I have to put back on this belief is if he said it, I believe it, I can pursue it, I can accomplish it, whether it takes 3 years or 30 years, I know it's going to happen. And so that's the infinite possibilities, as opposed to those finite, like, no, I tried, I quit.
I love that metaphor. I love it. And it reminds me of like when we talked about gratitude too. It's
Yeah.
like, it's all about what are you focused on?
Yes.
Where are you putting your focus? Because if you look for like the stars, you know, I say when it's dark, look for stars. When it's raining, look for rainbows. It's like, if you look for it, you will find it. If you look for the reasons to be grateful, you will find it. When Juan died, like, I was like, I know that what I need right now is to like dig into gratitude because otherwise I will like drown in this ditch, right? And it was like once I made the intention to look for the good, I found it. And it's not easy to do,
No.
but it's a choice that we make, right? Like there was so much good, like all of a sudden, like I was seeing the people show up in my life that I swear if I would have just been sulking, I would have never even like acknowledged how God was showing up.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
if you don't look for how God is showing up in your life, you will stay focused on like all the bad and you will see less and less and less and less and less and less opportunities and possibilities. The more you look for them, the more they become bigger. You see them more. You start to put on the polarized sunglasses because you take away the filter of pessimism. Really, it's pessimism,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I love that. And I can't believe it's been an hour. We always have such a great time.
Okay, so excited for next week. If anybody has any questions or if you're dealing with any limiting beliefs, reach out to us because this is really why we're here. And obviously, as you can see, we faced our own challenges and we truly believe that God has created us to pursue this path to help you pursue yours.
Yes. And next week we're covering habits and how we make sure we stay on track for pursuing our purpose while we have this vision, and then we manage our mindset. Now it's like, how do we support that with our energy? How do we bring the right energy to our lives, and how do we protect that energy?
Right. Thank you.
I'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Courage and Purpose. I hope today's insights inspired you to take bold action and align your life and career with what truly matters to you. If you're ready to dive deeper, I invite you to download my free Action Indicator Assessment, a powerful tool to help you uncover what's holding you back and take the next step towards clarity and confidence. Just visit www.lifeonpurpose.coach/action indicator to get started today. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who could use a little extra courage on their journey. Until next time, stay true to your purpose, lead with courage, and keep thriving. I'll see you in the next episode.